Hello, welcome to the video. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at section 11.3, where we're going to be collecting data. So, some of the things that they want us to consider when undertaking a statistical study is how are you supposed to collect the data? There are many different ways that you can collect a sample of a population. All right. The preferred way of collecting a sample is to try to make it as random of a sample as possible. Okay. So each member of a population has equal chance of being selected. There are many different methods for selecting a sample, all right? And there are advantages of disadvantages for these types of samples. So here are some types of samples, all right? So the first one says it's a self-selected sample, all right? Self-selected samples are members of a population that can be volunteered to be the sample. The next one to the right is a systematic sample, which is using a rule is used to selecting a population, for instance, selecting every other person. The next one here is a stratified sample, which is divided into smaller groups that share a similar characteristic. A sample is then randomly selected from each group. And then we have a cluster sample where a population is divided into groups called clusters. All the members in one or more of the clusters are selected. And then finally, you have a convenience sample, which only members of a population who are easily reachable are selected. And again, there are advantages and disadvantages for using these different types of samples. So in these examples here, you want to determine um, whether students in your school like the new design of the school's website, and then they want you to identify the type of sample described. So we're using those types of samples that were given to us in the previous slide. So for part A, it says you list all of the students alphabetically and choose every sixth student. So because you are choosing every sixth student, you are making a rule. Since you've made a rule on who is being selected, we are looking at a sample that is systematic. Next here it says you mail questionnaires and use only the questionnaires that are returned. Okay, so since the members of the population volunteered, so they volunteered, those are the ones that were returned, that means that this is a self-selected. Whoops. This is a self-selected sample. Here it says you ask all the students in your algebra class. Since, we're in a math class, it's very convenient to poll those groups of students. So this is an example of a convenience sample. And then finally, for part D here, it says you randomly select 2 students from each classroom because the classrooms are a way of making them into smaller groups. and then you're choosing 2 of them from each group. This is a stratified sample. All right, so now, like I said before, there are advantages and disadvantages of choosing certain types of samples. The reason why one of the disadvantages of some of these sample types is they may create what is called a bias. All right. Definition of a bias in this case is an error in the results that that may misrepresent the population. So what we're going to do here is we're going to identify the type of sample that is being used for each example. And then they want you to explain why the sample is biased. So in this particular one, it says a news organization asks its viewers to participate in an online poll about bullying. So since this is a poll where people go out and participated or voted on this, this is a self-selected sample. Now, why would this particular self-selected sample be biased? Well, the reason why it may be biased is that the people who participated probably have, or they do have strong opinions about the subject, and in this case, bullying. So if they have a strong opinion about that subject, you're more apt to participate in uh, that said poll. So that's why it would be biased. In this particular one, this particular example says that a computer science teacher wants to know how students at school most often access the internet. The teacher asks the students in one of the computer science classes. So since that particular teacher is a computer science teacher, he asks that person's class. That is a convenient sample, convenience sample. Why would that be biased? Well, the reason why is because you're only polling, or you're only asking a small number of the population. So you're not getting the full population's opinion. Here it says you are a member of your school's yearbook committee. You want to poll members of the senior class to find out what the theme of the yearbook should be. There are 246 students in the senior class. They want you to describe a method for selecting a random sample of 50 seniors to poll. So what we want to do, it says describe a method. What we want to be able to do is we want to be able to create a sample that is unbiased. So in order to make this unbiased, we have to, again, they say, make it as random as possible. So what we could do is in order to make it as random as possible, you could make it sort of systematic, or you could make it into sort of like a stratified sample, or on to give more specific examples, you could put like names out of a hat, so to speak. If you wanted to put more technology into it, you could use a name generator, and where it would randomly choose 50 seniors, and then that's where you could create your data from those 50. So that's how, again, that's how you could make it unbiased and random. All right, and now the last thing that we're going to take a look at is being able to look at the methods of collecting the data. So there are different ways you can collect data. The first one here, it says experiment. Experiment, it says it imposes a treatment on individuals in order to collect data on their responses to the treatment. The treatment may be medical treatment. It can be actions affected by a variable in the experiment. The next one is an observational study where you observe individuals and measure variables without controlling the individuals in their environment. The next one is a survey, which is an investigation of one or more characteristics of a population. In a survey, every member of the sample is asked one or more questions. And then finally, the last form of collecting data is a simulation where you use a model to reproduce the condition of a simulation or process so that the simulated outcome closely matches real world outcomes. Simulations allow you to study situations that are impractical or dangerous to create in real life. So we're going to be given some examples where they want us to first identify the method of collecting the data for each um, situation and then kind of describe it. So here it says a researcher records whether people at a gas station use hand sanitizers. So this is an example of observational study. Because when this researcher gathered the information, there was no it was without controlling the individual or applying treatment. Here it says a landscaper fertilizes 20 lawns with a regular fertilizer mix and 20 lawns with a new organic fertilizer. The landscaper then compares the lawns after 10 weeks and determines which fertilizer is better. This is an example of an experiment. The reason why is because when um, the landscaper, there was a treatment of fertilizer mix, just regular fertilizer mix, and then the organic. So there was imposed treatment in order to collect the data, because after 10 weeks, they determined which one was better. Last thing that we have here, it says a dentist surveys his patients by asking, do you brush your teeth at least twice per day and floss every day? Explain why the question may be biased or otherwise induced bias into the survey. Then describe a way to correct the flaw. Now, more often than not, if you are asked this question by your dentist, whether you have or you have not, most most people are going to answer yes to this question, whether it's true or not, because the, you're being asked by your dentist. And you would rather not get, you know, like ridiculed um, or like criticized or anything by that matter. So describe a way to correct this flaw is maybe to conduct like a maybe like a questionnaire the where it's anonymous if you're looking for it in as a statistical um, experiment or statistic or just try to get statistical results. So I would say that using an anonymous questionnaire would be your best bet because then there's no form of like embarrassment or something like that. People are more apt to answer more truthfully than just being asked directly by their dentist. And that is looking at collecting data. I hope this helps. Till next time.